Hello and welcome to Perspectives with Neilo. I'm your host, Neil O'Sullivan. If this is your first time tuning in, you might also like to check out our more than 70 past episodes. You can find them at pwneilo.com, that's pwneilo.com, or by searching for Perspectives with Neilo, wherever you get your podcasts. Taiwan doesn't often make the news headlines in the West, especially here in Ireland. A recent exception was a report on the devastating impact of Super Typhoon Regasa that slammed into the east coast of Taiwan with top winds of over 240 kilometers per hour on Tuesday, September 23rd. It caused severe flooding after a lake burst in Guangfu Township in Hualien County. At the time of recording, 18 people have been reported dead, with several more still missing and over 100 injured nationwide. The flooding in Taiwan washed away several key bridges, submerged vehicles, and left the ground floors of homes underwater. Many residents were trapped on upper stories awaiting rescue. Although floodwaters have receded, thick mud and debris remain, and search teams continue to go door to door in hopes of locating the missing. People from all over Taiwan have travelled to the scene of the disaster to help with the cleanup. Donations to the relief effort have been swift, no doubt spurred on by the extensive news coverage. But while this story about Super Typhoon Regasa's impact on Taiwan featured on Western TV news bulletins, there are many other worthy and important stories about Taiwan that frequently do not. One such story that we think deserves much greater coverage is China's ongoing geopolitical manoeuvring to isolate Taiwan. And in particular, how China's leader Xi Jinping is reportedly planning to use upcoming trade talks with the US to persuade President Donald Trump to oppose Taiwanese independence. This might sound fanciful, as President Trump is the one often portrayed as the Dealmaker-in-Chief. And so we're very curious to understand why China thinks it can gain the upper hand on the US to advance one of its key objectives. In this episode, we explore Beijing's strategic response to US tariffs and analyse the sources of leverage the Chinese Communist Party holds over the United States. We also assess the impact of the Trump administration's foreign policy on Taiwan and how China is exploiting the current geopolitical volatility to advance its authoritarian ambitions. On October 1st, China celebrated its National Day, the 76th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Chinese leader Xi Jinping addressed the nation, discussing the Chinese Communist Party's history and future plans, and of course, Taiwan.
要深化两岸交流合作
We must deepen cross-strait exchanges and cooperation, resolutely oppose separatist activities seeking Taiwan independence and external interference, and firmly safeguard national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Since coming to power in late 2012, Xi has made bringing Taiwan under Beijing's control a key tenet of what he calls China's national rejuvenation. Now well into an unprecedented third term, he has repeatedly emphasized that so-called reunification is inevitable and can't be stopped by outside forces, a reference to Washington's political and military support to Taipei. Of course, it must be stated here that even as the People's Republic of China celebrates its 76th anniversary, never at any time in its existence has the PRC occupied or controlled Taiwan. In fact, Taiwan rejects these Chinese Communist Party claims, and in a statement, Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council, which handles relations with China, said that the Taiwan government's cross-strait position remains the same. We are committed to maintaining the status quo in the Taiwan Strait and firmly defending our national sovereignty and democratic freedoms. Many of our regular listeners will be familiar with how the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, have been pursuing a multi-pronged approach to annex Taiwan for decades. These efforts have intensified in recent years and include military threats in the form of daily incursions into Taiwan's air defense identification zone and territorial waters, as well as maneuvers and blockade exercises around the island. The CCP are also bombarding the people of Taiwan with propaganda, disinformation, and a range of grey zone activities, including infiltrations of Taiwan's military, government, and society. Over the past 4 years, the number of prosecutions for espionage in Taiwan's courts has quadrupled. Since President Lai Ching-te launched a crackdown on Chinese infiltration in March, at least 5 members of the ruling party, including a former aide to the president, were investigated for spying. 4 of them were convicted for leaking state secrets at the end of September and given prison sentences of up to 10 years. In 2024, Taiwan's National Security Bureau said 64 people were prosecuted for spying for China, a marked increase compared to previous years. So it's no secret then that annexation of Taiwan is one of the top goals of Xi Jinping and the CCP. The concern among many international analysts is why Xi believes he can push US President Donald Trump to take a tougher stance on Taiwan during upcoming trade talks. To understand what's going on here, we must first understand how US-China trade relations have been progressing since Donald Trump's first term in office. A trade conflict between China and the United States has been ongoing since early 2018, when President Trump began imposing tariffs and other trade measures on China with the aim of forcing it to make changes to what the US said were long-standing unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft, which the Trump administration said were contributing to the US-China trade deficit. In response to the tariffs and trade measures, the Chinese government accused the Trump administration of engaging in protectionism and took retaliatory action. Following the trade war's escalation through 2019, the two sides reached a tense Phase 1 agreement in January of 2020. However, a temporary collapse in goods trade around the world during the COVID-19 pandemic, together with a short recession, diminished the chance of meeting that target, and China failed to buy the $200 billion worth of additional imports specified as part of that agreement. By the end of Trump's first presidency, the trade war was widely characterized as a failure for the United States. However, the Biden administration kept the tariffs in place and added additional levies on Chinese goods, such as electric vehicles and solar panels. As President Trump took office for his second term at the beginning of 2025, trade tensions continued to increase, and following the so-called Liberation Day announcement, a series of increasing tariffs led to the US imposing a 145% tariff on Chinese goods, and China imposing a 125% tariff on American goods in response. Beijing also reacted to the Trump administration's tariffs by shifting its export control strategy and targeting entire sectors and value chains on geopolitical grounds. The controls it imposed in April 2025 on 7 rare earth elements and certain types of rare earth magnets have not only wreaked havoc on US supply chains, but also on those in Europe. Beijing has a virtual monopoly on the supply of critical minerals, which are used to make everything from cars to military equipment and wind turbines. China currently mines over 69% of the world's rare earth elements and processes nearly 90% of the global supply, making it a dominant force in the rare earth market. This dominance is underpinned by large mineral reserves as well as lower production costs and significant government support. The upshot is that these rare earth export controls constitute a geo-economic lever that the Chinese Communist Party can pull at will in response to tariffs, technology restrictions, and geopolitical tensions with the West. Moreover, when it comes to trade negotiations with the United States, it means that Xi Jinping is in a very powerful position, with strong leverage over Donald Trump, and therefore he may view any trade negotiations as an opportunity to seek a change in US policy on Taiwan, and to further the Chinese Communist Party's ambitions of extending its authoritarian reach. A recent deal brokered by Trump and Xi for the sale of the social media app TikTok to US investors has paved the way for a series of high-level talks. The two leaders plan to meet at the upcoming Asia-Pacific Summit in South Korea at the end of October, with potential follow-up visits to Beijing by Trump in early 2026 and to the US by Xi that December. That said, these upcoming meetings are still tentative, and people close to the White House have said that Trump's trip to China hinges on Beijing's cooperation on trade and efforts to curb the flow of substances that make fentanyl. Nevertheless, President Trump has shown interest in striking an economic accord with China in the coming year, and the Wall Street Journal has reported that Xi Jinping is planning to use the coming period of interactions to press his American counterpart to formally state that the US opposes Taiwan's independence as part of a larger trade deal, thereby influencing a change in US policy that Beijing hopes could further isolate Taiwan. According to reports, Xi is no longer satisfied with the US position adopted by the Biden administration that Washington does not support Taiwanese independence, a statement that may have reassured Beijing at the time, but didn't deviate from the US's strategically ambiguous One China policy, which acknowledges Beijing's claim over Taiwan, but does not endorse or support it. And so, as Xi and Trump prepare for face-to-face meetings, an important question to consider is how US-Taiwan relations shape up at this time, given Donald Trump's America First priorities. Amid all this recent speculation, a State Department spokesperson said on September 30th that the US position on Taiwan has not changed. We remain committed to our One China policy, guided by the Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 US-China joint communiques, and the 6 assurances to Taiwan. The United States is committed to preserving peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, he said, and he added that China's actions continue to present the single greatest threat to peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. But despite these reassurances, many commentators have noted that the US's relationship with Taiwan appears to have grown a little more uncertain in recent months. They cite the fact that the Trump administration recently delayed military aid to Taiwan and denied Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te a US transit stop, a move that led to President Lai cancelling his trip to Latin America. Those actions have raised questions in both Washington and Taipei about whether it is giving priority to a trade deal with China over support for Taiwan. Sources close to the White House have been reported as saying that the administration is focused on deterring China from taking military action against Taiwan and encouraging Taipei to increase its spending on capabilities such as drones and munitions to bolster its self-defense. On the decision to deny President Lai's transit stop, sources say it was intended to avoid dragging the US into domestic Taiwanese politics by boosting Lai's party during the recent recall elections. But perhaps a more concerning development in US-Taiwan relations took place at the end of September. It was reported that US Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick told US television network News Nation that Washington's pitch to Taiwan would be a 50-50 split in semiconductor chip production, the vast majority of which are now made in Taiwan. Lutnick was alluding to the fact that Taiwan, which is home to the world's biggest semiconductor contract manufacturer, TSMC, runs a large trade surplus with the United States. The island's exports to the US are currently subject to a 20% tariff. TSMC, whose business is surging on strong demand for artificial intelligence applications, is investing $165 billion to build chip factories in the US state of Arizona, though the bulk of its production will still remain in Taiwan. Lutnick's comment refers to onshoring more of this production to the US. Many people in Taiwan view its chip-making prowess as a silicon shield that could deter potential invasion from China and rally international support for its security. In his interview, Lutnick downplayed the silicon shield, arguing that Taiwan would be safer with more balanced chip production between Washington and Taipei. Taiwan Vice Premier Cheng Li-chun, who is leading the tariff talks with Washington, told reporters that she had not discussed the 50-50 idea suggested by Lutnick during the talks. Our negotiating team has never made any commitment to a 50-50 split on chips. Rest assured, we did not discuss this issue during this round of talks, nor would we agree to such conditions, she said, according to Taiwan's official central news agency. Opposition parties in Taiwan were also unambiguous in their condemnation of Lutnick's proposal, with Eric Chu, chairman of Taiwan's main opposition party, the Kuomintang, calling it an act of exploitation and plunder, according to a central news agency report. Earlier this year, President Trump had also taken aim at Taiwan's dominance in semiconductors, accusing it of stealing the US's chip business. industry expert disagreed with Trump's assertion and said that Taiwan grew its own semiconductor industry organically through a combination of foresight, hard work, and investment. While some in Taiwan may find Trump and Lutnick's comments unsettling, others feel that Washington's growing list of demands are straining relations and risk further souring public sentiment in Taiwan towards the US, particularly at a time when support is needed most. For example, in a poll of more than 1,000 people aged 20 and over conducted in early April, the Taiwan Public Opinion Foundation asked whether the public thinks the United States under President Trump is dependable for Taiwan. A majority of over 57% felt that the US is no longer dependable under Trump, while a minority of 31% feel it is still dependable. When asked whether the public thinks the United States as a whole is more dependable than China, a majority of over 49% of respondents indicated that the US is more dependable than China, while a minority of 43% did not think so. Of course, such statements by Donald Trump and Howard Lutnick do not go unnoticed by the Chinese Communist Party either. These kinds of issues are frequently amplified and exploited by pro-China media and propaganda outlets who have for years promoted the notion that America does not care about Taiwan's well-being and wants only to sacrifice it on the battlefield to weaken China. China watchers say this is all part of the CCP's global influence campaign, taking advantage of every opportunity possible to push its agenda and assert dominance, and that such influence operations are not only confined to US-Taiwan relations. As we mentioned earlier, Beijing's monopoly on the supply of rare earth elements is not only impacting US supply chains, but European ones too. If Beijing plans on using their dominant position to influence Donald Trump, then they are likely to use it or similar means to influence other governments too. So perhaps one of the most important questions that comes out of all of this, particularly in this new era of geopolitical uncertainty, is how can we in the West help Taiwan? A similar question was raised during a panel discussion at the recent Warsaw Forum. Representing Taiwan on the panel was Xu Su-qian, who is a senior advisor to Taiwan's National Security Council. And here's what he had to say.
Taiwan is not asking European friends to defend ourselves. No, we will defend ourselves. But help us build up our capabilities. Do what you can do right now. Invest in our peace. We have to do right now. Let's not wait for another war from happening. We should deter it from happening. How to deter that? Contribute to our capabilities. We will pay. Okay? Sell it to us, first of all. Second, we should become each other's supply chain. Right? Taiwan has the best microelectronics in the world. The best. No doubt about that. And we want to become your supply, especially in unmanned system. We are also investing a lot in our own unmanned system. General, we are learning the lessons too, especially on the sea. But our unmanned system is composed of non-red supply chain. No Chinese components. Do you want that? Let's work together, right? Plus, on top of that, we should joint venture, we should co-production. Do co-production together, right? Each of us, we also have to enlarge our defense budget. Minister Lin just mentioned next year will be 3.32. By the year of 2027, we shall have 3.9 in our core defense budget. And you guys too. So because but we have to buy a lot, right? We all need to have our own defense industry, but we all have the scale issue. So we have to scale up. We have to sell to each other, right? So let's work together. This is what we can do right now to deter next war from happening.
That's Xu Su-qian, who is a senior advisor with Taiwan's National Security Council, speaking during a panel discussion at the Warsaw Forum recently. Taiwan is a vibrant democracy and a responsible global partner. Its 23 million people deserve a voice in the world. They deserve to be seen, heard, and respected. As China seeks to isolate Taiwan, we must all rise to meet this challenge together. Every country, every citizen, every voice matters. As Xu Su-qian says, it's time to invest in the peace. It has never been more important for the international community to stand up for Taiwan, stand up for democracy, stand up for what's right. If you'd like to find out more about the topics discussed in this episode, we've linked additional information in the Dive Deeper section of our blog, including links to the opinion poll we referenced and information on how you can make a donation to the Ragasa Typhoon Relief Appeal. You'll find it all at pwnilo.com. Feel free to also check out our more than 70 past episodes, including our recent interview with Bill Emmett on why you should care about Taiwan. You can find our past episodes at pwnilo.com or by searching for Perspectives with Nilo wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button so you don't miss out on future episodes. But that's where we leave it for now. As always, thank you for listening, and until the next time, Slán agus beannacht.